This is the Old Henderson Real News Show. We call it the real news and good news, something you don't hear on other stations nor television shows. You don't hear it, you always hear the bad news. And the other information you get usually doesn't do you any good, just get you excited and have you feeling that the days are coming to an end. We don't talk about that on the Old Henderson Real News Show. We give you the real facts. And we will tell you, though, ladies and gentlemen, that if you don't do certain things, you will have some difficulties in life. And if you do other things that we tell you, you will have a good life from birth to death. If you become active in your personal situations, if you work well with your family and get them to the point where they can be economically sound, and then start working in your community, and you will be dangerous. You will get respect that you don't currently get as a citizen in the United States. And of course, we have Mr. Socrates here today. He's our economic expert. We're going to talk about city politics, county politics. We're going to talk about broadband, internet services, and anything else we want to talk about. And of course, we want you all to call us if you have any comment. Now, we don't want you to have any long comments. We prefer that you ask a question. And if you want to talk over 1 minute, you can call me at my private number later on once we get off the show and we can talk about it. And if you want to come on the show yourself sometime in the future, all you have to do is call us and we'll let you do it. But on a talk show, when you have thousands and thousands of people listening, we just don't have a lot of room for comments. We want questions, and then we'll all be happy and others will get a chance to do what we need to do. Now, I want you all to know, people, that things are generally good and bad. It all depends on your economic situation and the ability you have to get training that you need to make a strong recovery in the next few years. And of course, if you are old and sick or young and sick, you heard the man talking about some of the things you can do with health care. There's a lot of good programs out there for people. But at this point, though, Mr. Socrates is going to get into his thing, talking about these wonderful underwriters, and then we'll take it from there. And of course, if you want to call in, just call in at 601-948-5950 after about 30 minutes or so. Mr. Socrates.
Dr. Henderson, it's always good being in the studio with you. And this evening is a difficult time for me because I see so many things that are disturbing that are going on in our community.
Well, we will talk about it. We're not going to spare any rods. We're going to talk about it. You don't mind talking about it, do you?
No, I absolutely don't mind talking about it. I think we have to talk about it. But as always, you know, we would not be on the air if it were not for our sponsors and our underwriters. It's critically important that you believe in this program enough to sponsor it, to help fund it, to share it, and to just be involved, to call in and help us dialogue and talk about the issues and the solutions. Now, our sponsors are very important, and so we'd like to first recognize the Action Leadership Institute. The Action Leadership Institute is a training company and people-centered think tank. You know, as I said to you once before, or maybe more than once, that one of the problems in our community is that it's lonely. There are nobody out there to talk to, especially in the small business community. There is no board of directors. There is no think tank. There is no vice president of training and no vice president of business development. Most business leaders are by themselves. They are lonely and afraid, and they're facing difficult times, broken marriages, broken business, staring in the face of bankruptcy, trying to make a difference and trying to be the master of their own destiny. So when you can get involved with Action Leadership Institute and be involved in a people-centered think tank, that is tremendously valuable to bounce ideas and concepts off of others that have your same interests. The Action Leadership Institute produced training modules for developing business ventures, 501c3 applications, grant writing, wills, trusts, and other healthcare directives. It's critically important that you get in touch with the Action Leadership Institute and tell them how much you appreciate that they sponsor this show. Our next underwriter is PCAP Media Group. They sponsor the L. Henderson Real News Tour. The tour provides speakers for churches, schools, and community organizations. You set a date and call PCAP at 601-488-2959. Or you can email at clu369@gmail.com. PCAP Media Group. Dr. Henderson is a renowned author and orator. He's sought after all over the country. Just last week, he was on a tour throughout the Delta, talking to people that had asked him to come up and share with them on issues that they are facing. So reach out to PCAP Media Group at 601-488-2959. Next sponsor is Astro Heating and Cooling. My good friend BJ, one of the principals over at Astro Heating and Cooling, a member of the 100 Black Men of Jackson, a great American, a guy that is living his dream, running his own enterprise, and offering financing is available for you as well. They are licensed and insured. Contact Astro Heating and Cooling at 601-373-1593. They're African American owned and veteran owned heating and cooling company. You know, their doors should be run over. They should have so much work in an 85% African American city until they just can't get to it all. And that's the kind of involvement that we gotta have in our community. As we rebuild a strong black business class, we'll lift up the entire community and we'll fight poverty. We'll eradicate poverty. And when we fight poverty, we will reduce crime. It's all interconnected. Astro Heating and Cooling is one of those businesses we must support. I call them every time there's an issue surrounding heating and cooling at my home and at my office. VJ at 601-373-1593. Call them. Dr. Stephanie McCain is an English tutor, writer, editor, resume developer. Contact Dr. McCain at 769-233-3814. You know, unemployment in the African American community is so high that we don't even track it anymore. If you don't apply within a couple of weeks, they just drop the statistic. You didn't even apply, so it don't count. But we know that unemployment in the African American community in the black male is greater than 65% are unemployed. Now, the only way you're going to get employed is to get with Dr. Stephanie McCain and let her tutor you. Let her show you how to write a resume. You know, your resume goes before you. When you go in for the interview, and you won't even get an interview if you don't have a good resume, but even when you get a good resume and you go in for the interview, you gotta be able to speak. You gotta be able to explain yourself, and you gotta talk about what your strengths and what your weaknesses are and why it's important that you hire me for this job. You can get that done if you'll reach out to Dr. Stephanie McCain at 769-233-3814. Finally, as a business owner, you too can add value to your company by advertising your goods and services on the L. Henderson Real News Show. WMPR 90.1 is a 100,000 watt radio station. Call them at 601-201-1957. Dr. Henderson, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Socrates. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a couple more underwriters, and we want to talk about them all the time, and we want you to call them. And one that is very important is Chancellor's Insurance Agency. Sharon Chancellor is the lead agent, and I want you to know they have something that we've been talking about for over 6 months. They have the great bundle that I talk about: auto, home, life, renters, business, and they also include recreational toys, those little three-wheelers that you all are buying for your children and your husbands and wives are riding around in the country on their farms on those three-wheelers, just having a good time. And you need to call Chancellor's and let her get you protected. Call Chancellor's Insurance Agency at 769-572-5562. That's Chancellor's Insurance Agency, 769-572-5562. Get insurance, folks, and you'll be fine. And of course, I believe strongly that some of you need to update your education skills, so when you get ready to get a real job, after you talk to Dr. McCain, she will get that resume together for you. But now, a resume is not going to be too good for you if you don't have at least a high school equivalency document, which we call a GED. And I can tell you where you can get it free, folks. Every Saturday, you can go to Second Chance Outreach Learning Center. They are located in Jackson, Mississippi. They offer free GED classes. Right now, they're going to start a new series of healthcare classes. And all you have to do is write this number down, call those folks and say, I need to get a GED. Now, if you are 65 or younger, between 65 and 16, you need a GED to be able to get training in some of these new areas that Mr. Socrates and I will be talking about today and in the future. Folks, you must get that free GED. Most folks are not going to go into a training situation and get out with a certification unless they have that GED. There are a few exceptions, but get that GED. They will work with you in a private moment, folks, and that's real good. They will not criticize you. They will give you what we call a pre-test to see where your skill level is. All of this is free, and then you can secretly take your GED class online. Don't even tell your wife or your spouse or your children. It's not their business. If you haven't told them already, just get you one and be ready to do some things. And since some of you know that if you get some healthcare certifications, you can get paid $15 to $25 or $30 an hour working with sick people, those that need rehabilitation, and a lot of seniors. So take advantage of these opportunities. And a lot of these things can be done at home. And of course, while you're out there working, you need to call our underwriter, and I call them Commercial and Residential Cleaning Services. My good friend there is Miss J.J. Jackson. She will clean your house and your small business, and she works Monday through Saturday. Call Commercial Residential Cleaning Services at 769-798-1122. I've been telling you for months, get a pencil or record what you hear on this show so you can tell your preachers, your politicians, and other members of your family that you don't even know where they are now. I bet a lot of you all have young boys, and I hear the congressman and I hear city council people talking about all these young boys and girls that are running around loose in Jackson, in Canton, all over the United States, in the big cities and small cities, Yazoo City, and the parents don't know where they are. So folks, you need to call them right now and tell them to listen to the Al Henderson Real News Show. I told you earlier, we only talk about things that you need to know. We give you the real facts, and that's the good news. So Mr. Socrates, we know that things are going on, and I had a short talk with you earlier today, and you were telling me that there are some things going down that you're not pleased with, and you were saying certain people, elected and unelected, or endorsing tactics that are just like some that Hitler used in the old days, and Bilbo and some of those in Mississippi, and you just don't enjoy talking about these kind of things, but you will do it since you believe in being an independent citizen and you want some peace and order in your city, in your state, and America. What are some of these things that you're concerned about today, sir?
Well, Dr. Henderson, thank you. There are so many things that we as black people have to be concerned about, especially in Jackson, Mississippi. Until this evening, since we're going to have a open discussion. You know, I'd like to just start out by saying that there is a real issue with crime in Jackson. Now, everybody already understands that Jackson is the #1 murder capital of the world, surpassed St. Louis on that list. And that is a dubious distinction that we do not want in our city. But yet we don't have a plan. We don't have an articulated plan of action that will allow African Americans to challenge and change the behavior of our children. And we sit idly by and we're watching other entities begin to put forces in place to be able to manage the Negro population. And one of those things, Dr. Henderson, is the Capitol Police Department. Now, it's strange enough that you're going to have another agency operating within Jackson. Just stop and think about, Dr. Henderson, how many agencies currently operate in Jackson. I mean, you got the Jackson Police Department, you got the Sheriff Department, you got the Highway Patrol, you got the DEA, you got the Capitol Police Department, you got the U.S. Marshal's Office, you got NTF. All of these agencies are operating inside of Jackson, Mississippi currently. And yet we're the most dangerous place in the country. So black people, you gotta wake up. It's not going to be tolerated much longer. Now, the governor of the state of Mississippi has increased the Capitol Police Department from 75 officers to 150 officers by the end of 2023 in Jackson, Mississippi. That means that the Capitol Police Department will be larger than the Jackson Police Department. And yet their footprint that they patrol in is only 1/8 of the entire city. So we gotta stop, Dr. Henderson, and say, why are we allowing the governor in the state of Mississippi to put his own police force within our city and no one says a word?
Well, it's very simple. It's all about the money, Mr. Socrates. I must tell you, sir, and all the listeners and viewers know this as a fact. When you have the money, you make the rules. When you want money and can't get it, you sit by and say nothing, hoping you can get some later on. It's just that simple. See, I don't make these things difficult. So when you have the plan in place to curtail certain activities, to protect yourself, you will do it. Now, not too many people in the metro cities throughout the United States are too concerned about what I call the so-called colored minorities. Now, I didn't say black people, I'd say colored minorities. I'm talking about the so-called colored Hispanics, the colored Native Americans, all of these other dark-colored types from India and Asia and places like that, including the black people. Now, when those people are being abused, shot, killed, scammed, most people don't care too much about it. Even the black people, when they get killed in these inner city ghettos, the black moms and dads and cousins holler and shed a few tears, and they don't do anything else about it. And that's why I'm going to talk about it this evening, what they need to do to solve these problems. They have a hard time. Don't do anything but shed a few tears, pray a few prayers. By the time the police kills them, they demonstrate around for years and weeks and months, and they don't do anything but cause problems for themselves, because our listeners and viewers, Mr. Socrates, got to understand that they have a choice in life. They have to change or die. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to decide that you must organize and stop criticizing the human enemies of mankind. Everyone that has the power, the money, the influence, those that control all the policy-making initiatives, those that have the courts and the police and the military behind them, usually are the top 10% in the nation or in the city or in the state, and they're going to look out for your interests first. So now if you don't learn that you are important and that you don't start thinking about some things you've heard on the Old Henry's a Real News show, and that is you have to start looking at your situation on the local level and control 5 areas of activity from the local level. You don't want to hear it, and that's exactly what I'm going to tell you. Folks, starting on the local level, if you don't start rebuilding and controlling your own institutions in these 5 areas that I've been talking about for some time, you're going to be doomed to 3 generations of inactivity, where you just be a walking zombie. You'll be what I call the walking dead with nothing going on. So if you don't control your education and training, we're going to talk about it in a few minutes, your religion, which you don't have much of, you're not practicing that, you can close most of your churches. If you don't get the right leadership in the community, we'll talk about the preachers, the elected and appointed officials, and the corporate leaders. You pay all of these people. And if you don't get your economics together, I had a relative that died not too long ago. I didn't go to the funeral. I don't believe in wasting time at funeral. But those jokers didn't even have a will, didn't have a power of attorney, in the hospital and died, and we didn't know where they were. You don't visit a lot these days. But now if they had that will together, had that power of attorney, they could have given it to the nurse or the doctor or somebody, and they would have started calling around until they found somebody. So folks, first you got to look out for yourself and your family. So get your wills together. And then when you start looking at your politics, that's the most critical. That's the most important agency in the history of the world, those that make policies. And these people usually are elected or appointed, or they just take over and declare themselves a dictator, and they whip the people and do whatever they want. So the remedy, folks, is something that we've been talking about for years here on this show and other shows. There are a lot of people to blame, and I'm not going to blame anyone specifically, but I do know what can happen. The parents and the churches are going to have to start building coalitions. And ladies and gentlemen, all of you all that have these kids that are out of control, you're going to have to get them under control, because there are certain politicians going to have them locked up just because they are out there running around lost at night, because they know the parents don't know where they are, don't care where they are. They pretend they do, but they don't. If you have a child under 18 and he is out anywhere after 11 a.m. and you don't know where he is, nor when he's coming back or who he's with, you are responsible. And that's why some of the politicians, and we might talk about it, want to put you in jail, want to put the child in jail. But I will tell you, that's not going to help the situation. What will help the situation is the churches got to get together and form their own private and public school systems on the denominational basis. Listen now, the churches must get together as denominations. I'm not talking about individual churches. Do compacts or agreement with the public schools, and you have to start in your church, ladies and gentlemen, with pre-K through 12, and make sure they learn 4 things. And if they learn these 4 things when they are in school, in kindergarten, they will be competitive, I guarantee you. Every kindergarten student through 12th grade ought to know the following. They ought to know how to read. They ought to know how to write. They should know how to communicate in sentences, where you talk to somebody with a full sentence and look at them in the eyes, and they must learn some mathematics. Where do they start getting this information before they get to kindergarten? They start when they're about 9 months old at home with the parents. And since a lot of parents now don't love their children to the point where they want to raise them, they give them to the grandmothers. And I notice now in certain families, the grandmothers are in their 30s, mid-30s, so they skip them and give those children to the great-grandparents. Jesus Christ, and those ladies and men are in their 80s and high 70s, some in the 90s, and they're trying to raise some kids. So folks, you've got to get those kids when they're about 9 months old and start teaching them something. If you don't have the skills you need to have to get a job, go and get that GED free that I was telling you about. And if you don't have the skills once you get that GED, then that'll give you an opportunity to enroll in all kinds of classes where you can get a job. These free healthcare classes. These community colleges got free money for you if you get a GED, or if you're just 16 and you're able to do something and have a will and desire. Unlimited opportunities. So you must have these skills, ladies and gentlemen, to what I call be able to recover from the last 3 years that you all lost due to COVID. Now some of the kids, the poor kids that I mentioned, those minorities of color, except the Asians, are very far behind. 3 years behind. And ladies and gentlemen, if you don't do that, you're going to suffer what Mr. Socrates is going to talk about now. Mr. Socrates, I heard somebody say that there's a remedy for all these hoodlums running around here and participating in drive-by shooting. Didn't you say some of the politicians talking about taking some drastic action on these folks?
They have. The government is the management of the Negro. The plan is fully in place. And it consists of, let's double our police forces outside of Jackson Police Department, and let's put white folk in charge of the police force inside of Jackson, Mississippi. And while black Negroes that we send down to the city council and send down to the mayor's office, etc., are not saying one word about it. Not a single word. And it's supposed to protest in that. What we have is that the council itself is turning on its citizens because of its inability to come up with strategies and plans to curtail crime in its city. It has now enacted ordinances, which is municipal law of some sort, that says that the Stokes plan says that if you are involved in a drive-by shooting, that we will impound the car and attack the car. And so now we're going to impound the car and put it in the impound yard. That's his strategy. And then Aaron Banks' plan said that we are going to lock up the parents of the children that committed the crime in the first place. And so what we have now is, you can see this clearly, what you have is the beefing up of a non-African American controlled police force in our city. And African American council people and elected officials continue to betray the people that sent them down there. And these things could be no more evident than in the election of the president of the city council that just occurred this week. Our 7 African American members elected a white, conservative, racist Republican as president of the council. Now, how in the world do we send 7 black people down there to govern an 85% black town, and then on the last year they elected a white female to be president of the council, Virgil Lindsay, and this term they elect Ashby Foote. Now Martin Luther King and and Malcolm and Medgar and Charles and everybody that's been out here on this battleground should be concerned. These Negroes have completely turned on the individuals that sent them there in the first place. And I'm speaking openly and honestly, and these folks were my friends. I don't know how we see each other today. There's nobody invested more in the Aaron Banks career than I did early on. I thought that he had a bright future in this city. Thought that he eventually would be mayor of the great city of Jackson and would do great things. But somewhere along the line, something happened. And now his attention is more aligned with our adversaries than it is with solving issues for our people. And Kenny Stokes, he's been a champion of the small man for 30 years. He's been out here single-handedly fighting for the rights of small folk for 30-some years against insurmountable odds. And somehow, somewhere, he has become misguided and now does not say anything about the Capitol Police Department, does not say anything about 70% of our 1% sales tax money going into Virgil Lenz's ward and Ward 7 in Fondren, while people in South Jackson have been without water for the last 3 consecutive weeks, and he hadn't said a word. Instead, he says we're going to impound the car. Bank says we're going to lock up the parent. Now, the father is not in the house in the first place, so the grandmother is raising the children. So the child commits a crime, now we're going to lock up the grandmother, put her in jail, and we're just going to continue to turn on ourselves, Dr. Henderson, and this cannot end very good.
Well, let me tell you what the research says about this, and I want our viewers and listeners to understand this. They have used these tactics, or tried to use them, since the beginning of mankind, one way or the other. Of course, in the early days, they would take the chariot away, or they would take the horse away from the people that was out in the community, living in slave quarters and living in those European areas where they were serfs, where they didn't own anything, worked like slaves. So in the modern time, the research shows that if you have a marginal population, Mr. Socrates, and they are involved in what we call underground activities, you can't win if you go and take their car, take their gun, lock up the parents. The research shows this is what's going to happen. When you do this, they have lost their transportation. You done locked up that grandmother, that young lady that might have 1 or 2 of her 5 children. Now here's what happened to them. They done lost their transportation. They lost their little jobs that a lot of them have. They're going to need more money, more food, more shelter. And then they're going to go and take your gun, Mr. Socrates, because the state has the one they took from that felon that when he took the car from him. And they're going to do more robbing and killing and stealing, more drive-bys. And the thing is when you get a board full of trouble, and then the trouble is starting to disappear in your area, then the rats and the roaches going to move on to the next sector in society to find a crumb to eat. And when that happens, they're going to start multiplying by the thousands. And one day you're going to have a loud noise in your community with the pets, for instance. Millions of them flying over the area with these people that need money, food, clothing, and shelter. Thousands of them going to be killing and robbing and stealing and taking everything in all the communities, even the gated communities. Because when you take everything in the urban ghettos and what I call these relocation camps, folks are not going to die. They're not going to starve to death. They're going to see who is eating, who is riding, who has the gun, Mr. Socrates, and they're going to take it. The thing to do to solve these problems, folks, is to prepare yourself and your children and improve your basic skills. You have to get your young people that's been messed over in these school systems for years, and you have to be able to recover the lost learning. They have not been prepared successfully to transition into secondary education, into vocational and college programs. If you get a person and put him or her into a vocational program trying to learn some air conditioning with astro cleaning and some of these others, some plumbing skills or whatever, and they can't read, ladies and gentlemen, they cannot maneuver these courses. All you need is a good 5th grade reading level, but most of the young people that are causing the problems in inner city usually stop around the 4th grade with their learning, and they can't go beyond that. So when they get in middle school, they drop out, and that's where the problems have always come from. So folks, you got to start with the basic skills, and you got to work with these young females and these young boys. That's why the church schools must start operating on the denominational level, and then partner with the public schools. We told you this 2 or 3 weeks ago. and teach the basic skills. Research shows that you have 75% of the inner city, males and females, that are not likely to be competent. Even if they get a high school education, they're going to be on the basis of about ninth grade. So 75% of the males are not going to be able to get a resume because they're not going to have one. And we have a caller, we're going to get him in a few minutes. So they're going to be out there, I'm talking about 75% of the males now, the males of color. They're going to be involved, ladies and gentlemen, and some of you got relatives doing this right now. I have some that's involved in what we call underground community black market activity. What does that consist of? I'm going to tell you. You already know. You can call me and tell me. Underground black market community activity includes gang banging, drug dealing, stealing, and drive-by shooting. People want to get that drug money. They sell these drugs, they want their money. These gang bangers are going to get whipped themselves. I know a lot about gangs. I worked in the Job Corps system for 6 years. We had 18 different gangs in one place. And we didn't have any major trouble with them because I knew how to deal with them. I'm not going to tell you what I used to do to them. I told you on one show some time ago. So when they start all this killing and drive-by, you're going to find that most of their guardians approve of this. Now, somebody called me the other day, no, the guardians don't approve of this. They do approve of it in most cases. Everyone that's having difficulty, economically, socially, politically, no money, no opportunity for change, no transportation, and the kids at home doing things, paying half of the bills, providing the transportation, buying clothes for the parents. They know something's going on, and these guardians approve this activity by not saying anything. You know the rent is due, grandson. Mama, you know I don't have a job. I'm going to tell you again, boy, rent is due. We don't want these lights cut off again. We want this heat back on. It's tough up in here. Now I make it simple so you can understand it. So now when you find that this 75% out here that can't perform well, the research shows that 50% of these unskilled blacks and females, or what we call minorities of color, going to end up in juvenile detention centers, jails, and in state and federal prisons. So you've got to curtail this activity by looking at the situation, finding out what the problem is, addressing it starting about 9 months of age, and work with them and get those basic skills together so they can pass that third grade test and be able to be competitive. And Mr. Socrates knows that these ideas that these people talking about are not going to work. I'm telling you, research says it's not going to work. You can take all the guns you want from the convicted felons, and all they're going to do is go to your house, Mr. Socrates, or come to mine and take my 6 guns. And I just hope they don't make that mistake. Now, if I'm gone, that'll be all right. But if I'm there, we're going to fight over those guns.
Well, I don't know. Somebody in your own house will probably give you up the way this is going. Again, I just cannot get past the point that 7 African American city council people would elect Ashby Foote as the city council president for the city of Jackson, Mississippi. And I can't get over the fact that the Capitol Police Department is going to be larger than Jackson Police Department and only patrol 1/8 of the city. And I can't get over the fact that as we turn on ourselves, as we destroy black businesses, which we have done a great job of, there are fewer black businesses in Jackson today than there was 10 years ago. And they're constantly under attack. All of the resources of Jackson are going outside of Jackson to white contractors and to those that have a plan to eradicate and relocate the African Americans in this city. And we send people down there and they elect as their leader a white Republican in an 85% black town. And then we're going to take our people's cars and impound them, and then we're going to lock up our grandmothers who are parents of children that commit crimes. And then we're going to spend 70% of the 1% sales tax dollars in Ward 7 over in Fondren and Virgil Lenz's ward, while folk in South Jackson are going without water for 2 or 3 weeks. People, Doc, we have some issues that are mounting, that the odds for the survival of the black man is becoming, very, very thin, that he will be able to make it. And then we have this same group of people that on tomorrow at 10 o'clock, we will be in the Chancery Court's office to watch this historic trial where the Jackson City Council is suing the mayor about his award of a contract to the garbage collections. And then, Doc, at the same time, while we're fighting in court to remove a black business person, a black council, 85% black city, we're going to court to fight to remove a black contractor so they can't pick up the garbage anymore, which we haven't paid him in 90 days in the first place, trying to break him down and run him out of business that way. And then we'll be in court trying to do that. Now, at the same time, Doc, during the same week, our African-American-led city raised the sanitation rates by almost double. You raise your sanitation rates by almost double on a city already. We pay the highest taxes of any other municipality in the country. Our 9% sales tax rate is greater than anybody else in the country. Normally is 7% in most cities in Mississippi, and Jackson is 8 and can be 9. We already pay more taxes. What we pay for car tax is greater than anywhere else in the world. And yet 42% of our people, our population, live below the poverty line in Jackson. How can you be the poorest nation with the highest taxes and then have your government turn on you in the way that we're having here? So we need everybody to be at the Chancery Court's office tomorrow at 10 o'clock to watch this historic trial as this council tries to remove this African-American business out of our city. They double the sanitation rates, and they won't accept a $1.2 million annual savings that Richard's Disposal Service is providing. I think we need more than prayer, Doc.
Well, I've been telling you that for 30 years. Prayer is no good if you don't do any work with it. And if you're praying and even working, if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a prioritized corrective action plan with an agenda, a timeline, and a checklist, you're still not going to be successful. Jesus told these folks that. He told them in basically words, small words, that if you want to do good, all you got to do is the 10 Commandments. I've been telling you for years, there are very few so-called Christians that I know that know anything about the 10 Commandments. They can't quote them in order as printed in any of the versions in the Bible. They know 2 or 3 of them. I've been telling you for a while that if you don't know them, you can't do them. And now since the churches have closed, they got these old Facebook and YouTube churches. That's not going to help the folks in it. A lot of them not going to ever come back. And some of these preachers are going to have to go out there and get another job. Now, I'm not teasing anybody. I'm just giving you the fact. Because if I were a preacher and I done lost my $800 or $900 a week job, I'm going to have to go out there after I spend that money and find me something to do. Suppose I'm between 45 and 75. They got to go out and find a job, and I've been preaching for the last 20 years. I'm going to need a resume for sure, and they're going to have to call Dr. McCain to get that thing together. And I want you to understand, Mr. Socrates, that even though you are saying that we have some alarming and serious problems, these things can be addressed very simply. All the church people have to do, now this is on a denominational basis, the major denominations in Hinds County and Jackson, they have 5 major black denominations that have hundreds of people, thousands of people. All of them have churches. They have the lights on, and I like to always talk about this. They have the space. Many of them have family life centers. They have the teachers already in the school, in the church. They have young people that's on the road. They're connected to the colleges and universities in the area. So they have all the teachers they need to do what they want to do, and the church can have these schools. The state already said the churches can start public and private schools and get the money. They can build coalitions with the public schools and be taught things that they are not able to teach. And then the community organization, Mr. Socrates, we have something called the neighborhood association. They can get together with the churches, and then they can work with the two groups and put plans together that can be executed in 30, 60, 90 days, and give these plans to two major groups, the elected and appointed officials and the corporate leaders. See, a lot of people don't understand, Mr. Socrates, that the politicians, the elected and appointed, are sponsored by special interest groups, and that's usually the corporate leaders that have the money. Because the corporate leader, if he has a big operation, we call it a big company, he is going to pay himself $6 to $30 million and pay most of his workers the minimum wage or less. And those that are in what I call lower middle management, they're going to make the minimum wage plus a quarter. And those that are in management where they don't have to click in will make from $25,000 to $45,000. And if you start talking about labor unions, you can expect to have some trouble. That's not going to happen. So you got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, get your organization together. Stop criticizing the human enemies of mankind. Organize, pool your resources where you are with what you have. Be your own leaders. If you have churches and you have denominations, which you do, and if you all can't get together, you need to close all these churches down and make a factory or do something. Or just close them down and tear them up and put a garden out there where that church used to be. And if you have these community organizations, they're all over Jackson, all over Hinds County, all over these big cities. And if the presidents of these community organizations can't get together and put a plan together to help their kids, just because you live in that good, nice subdivision, community organization leaders, those gangbangers going to be by there. They're going to give you a visit now, I'm telling you. So you start training them right where they are in their local churches, and you will find some peace and harmony. Because the word is, when you start accounting for your troubles and assessing your troubles, and then start accelerating learning, which means you're going to improve the basic skills that people need to be improved so they can be competitive, you start solving your problems. You don't have but 8 years to do it, ladies and gentlemen, and you can start doing this in 30, 60, 90 days, I'm telling you. All these denominations get together next week, and they can have their schools incorporated in one day. It takes about 30 minutes to get a school incorporated in the state of Mississippi. I told you the churches already have everything else they need. They have the money base, just need to do it. The community organizations, neighborhood associations, they have some of the best educated, highly skilled individuals. Most of the presidents, the secretary, the treasurer are either lawyers, doctors, or business people, church leaders, deacons. So they know what to do. They just won't do anything but criticize folks, and that's not going to do any good. If I were controlling you and determining your destiny from birth to death, and you didn't say anything, I would put the squeeze on you a little more. So I'm going to tell you folks, you don't like good news and real news. Our job here on the Elder Henderson Real News Show is to give it to you and tell you, organize, don't criticize, do something for yourself, where you are with your own leaders, starting in 30, 60, 90 days. Mr. Socrates.
Yeah, Doc, it's we can't do any more than we are by sounding the alarm. The telephone lines are open, and so I know that the community is listening. I know that they are aware. I know that we must come together as a community and address these issues. It's critically important. Let me just recap for you real clearly what's got me all upset. And that is the fact that the state of Mississippi has introduced the legislation to allow for the Capitol Police Department to have up to 150 officers in Jackson. The Jackson Police Department doesn't have that many officers. And so we cannot allow others to start taking over and running our city. And at the same time as we're being attacked from the legislative branch that says that we will take your airport from you, we will take your wastewater treatment plant from you, we will take your police department from you, then we have African Americans that we elected that will turn around and elect a white conservative Republican as president of the city council.
And the bad news is, Mr. Secretary, even the judges have abandoned the black people. When there are major problems in the city or the county, most of the black judges say, well, we're not going to get involved in this, I know that boy. And they turn it over to a Caucasian judge. And we done elected those folks, and they make that good salary sitting up there. You know, judges don't do a lot of work. Now, I know some, I hope some call and criticize. They have aides to put most of their documents together. They review those things, those documents, and then they go and make a decision after they hear the people talk about what the problems are, you know, the clients that come up in there. You know, that's just the way it is. Now, I know these judges been to law school, many of them practice law, and they got tired of practicing law because the economic situation is not too good when you have too many lawyers in a community. So the best thing to do is try to be a judge. And if you can get 4 years 2 or 3 times, Mr. Sock, you are in a good position. So judges, now this is very sensitive. If you've been elected to take care of your district or your circuits, or if you're a youth court judge, when something happened, you already qualified, you're already certified, you've already been elected. Be bold and judge those cases according to law, make the decision that's appropriate, and don't put everybody in jail. You assign them to a GED program, or demand to go back to school, or tell the church group that's come there complaining, y'all need to start a church school and get these boys in here. If you have drug problems, don't put them in prison because of drugs. The people with the money in the gated communities use way more drugs than these poor black boys use and girls use. So put them in a drug program, and what's a drug done happen today, skill training during the evening, or vice versa. And if you don't want them living in the community, put them in hotels and have the training right in the hotels. They have some in abandoned hotels in this area that can easily be done. I'm telling you, Mr. Sock, this is a research fact. The county and the city and the other municipalities have all the money they need to do these things. They just don't have the will, the desire, nor a plan to do it. And you see, we are telling them through research what can be done starting in 30 to 60 days, 30 to 60, 90 days. Unlimited money, sir, to do any of these things. Talk to me.
Well, the deal is, you know, we're under attack, we're under siege, and it's all very clear for those of us who can see. It's very, very clear. The refusal to expand Medicaid in the state of Mississippi, where when we send $1 to Washington, D.C., we spend $1 on Medicaid, the state would reimburse us $5.43. And we refuse to accept those dollars into the state of Mississippi because it was called Obamacare. That's $5.43 that's coming back into Mississippi, billions of dollars that would flow in our community to help eradicate the health issues and problems in our state that this governor, this government refuses to accept.
Okay, well, we have a caller, I would hope. Go ahead, caller, talk to us quickly.
How y'all doing?
We're doing fine, sir. Very well.
All right. Mr. Sock.
Yeah.
Now, you talking, we spoke in terms of the city council. Did we not think that actually Bush would have been a better president than some of the others? Why did we overlook him? I mean, I don't understand how that happened.
I don't understand how it happened either. It is impossible to understand how that happens. in an 85% black town that's in a constant struggle with the legislature who denies any funding opportunities to the city of Jackson, who's trying to take his real property, including his airport, away from him. How would 7 African Americans elect as their leader a white conservative Republican? It doesn't make sense, Carla.
I know. I think Aaron Banks would have been a better candidate for that position.
Well, I think that either one of the 7. I mean, we got 7 blacks down there. I mean, I'm sorry, we got 5 blacks down there on a 7-member council. We got 5 African Americans down there on a 7-member board. One of the 5 could be president, but you see, when they nominated Aaron Banks to be president, he did not get the votes. Carla? Black folk have turned on themselves in a way that I've never seen before, and I've been around here a long, long time. I've never seen black folk turn on each other the way that we're doing now. We're destroying black.
What Stokes got to say about it?
Well, you know, Kenny Stokes, as I said earlier, you know, he's been out here a long time as a champion of the people, but he's lost his way, Carla. He's lost his way when he votes to take away an African American business, Richards Disposal Services, that gives a $1.2 million savings annually in our community, and then Stokes and his gang vote to increase sanitation fees and double that, but won't take a savings. It's something rotten in Denmark.
Well, Carla, let me add something to this and just tell you what the so-called constitutional process could and ought to be in Hinds County and the city with the elected officials. All these 7 members, all 7 members are qualified and certified. You all put them in office. And the way you control any group is you have to talk to them individually and say, I'm the best candidate. And I used to do this when I was a political consultant in Georgia and some of the other states I usually in. You tell the most powerful one, say, I want the job, I have the money, I have the backing, and I want you to support me. What can I do to help you? Think about it. You don't have them to give you a decision right then. So we're going to meet in a few days. All you have to do, Carla, is get a majority vote. But if they would do this thing in a so-called democratic manner, where you wouldn't have a lot of chaos, if you have 5 members on the board of supervisors, 7 on the city council, every time they have a rotation, they get a person that's elected and certified to be the president, next one be vice president, and give all of them a chance, because they can't pass any legislation or policies unless they have a majority. And that's the way you work that out. But when you start having the same 2 or 3 people, the president of the city council, or the county supervisors in the respective counties and states throughout the country, you have some underhanded heavy hitters that control the money, and somebody is being persuaded to move in the wrong direction. Now that is the political. Yes, sir.
Let me ask the last quick question.
Yes.
How could they be justified in raising the sanitation fee when their water is only good for washing your car?
Well, let me tell you the real deal behind this. They better raise it, because they're going to have to pay that garbage pickup man. What is that new company called?
Richards.
They're going to have to pay Richardson. I guarantee you. I know a little about contracts. When you have a contract with a person, whether it's signed or not, and you let him work, you got to pay it. Now, you might not pay it today or tomorrow, but someone will be going to court soon, and there's going to be a lot of punitive damage involved. Plus, the lawyer's going to make about 1/3 of whatever the award is. So they're going to pay the man, I guarantee you. And our situation is going to get worse. And they need that money because they know they're going to be sued. That's just the simple, basic fact, caller. So you get ready to pay that increase, and in a few years, they are going to court, and the man going to win. You don't work in a so-called democratic country for a municipality or for anyone, you're going to get paid one day.
So why don't they try to recover some of this stolen money. Man, you'll be
No, you're not supposed to do that now. You're not supposed to do that. That's not normal because that's too difficult and you get punished when you start trying to recover stolen money. If you're an elected official, the people that stole the money is going to get you off their side. They're going to find another candidate to run and finance him and kick you out of office. And most politicians and preachers love their positions, sir. Don't you love what you have? You have a good job, you're getting paid, or you're retired now, you got good money coming in. You don't want to lose it. See, I'm going to give it to you simple so a third grader will understand it. That's just the way it works. What is your next question?
Well, I'm gone, but have you and Socrates thought about running for any city office? Like,
No.
I think you all will make two good candidates.
No, we are consultants, we are advisors. We are like the old prophets. We tell you what's going to happen to you and tell you how to solve the problem before it happens to you. Now, we're not interested in running. We would have done that years ago. But now Mr. Socrates can speak for himself. I'd said we. But if he wants to run, he will do it. But Mr. Socrates is a smart man. He can speak for himself. Go ahead, Mr. Socrates.
Yeah, Carl, I think that we're going to have to put forth a slate of candidates that is going to include folk that we have really vetted, that really understand the suffering that's going on in this community, that will not betray us the way that we have. We have to build a strong black business class, and you never hear a council person say that, speak to that, have no concern about it whatsoever. We've lost so much in the last 10 to 15 years. You guys have no idea how much Jackson has lost in the last 10 to 15 years in terms of all of the things and programs that we had in place. We were rolling at one time 12 years ago, and now we're on a spiral downward. And so, Carla, we're going to have to put forth a slate of candidates. And yeah, we're going to have to call on some older people that are retired, that believe in what we're talking about, that were part of the struggle, and understand what Martin was fighting about and why Medgar gave his life and what Charles Evans was fighting about. We got to have some people who understand what the hell that was all about. And the current leaders that we have down there are not in touch with that.
Well, I can agree with that 100%, but what the callers and the viewers don't seem to understand, sometimes when you are elected or appointed in a position of responsibility, you have to be economically independent. And if you're not economically independent, you can't make certain decisions, Mr. Socrates. You know that. Most people won't even mention that. But when you owe everybody in town, and you have to make decisions about economic issues, sometimes you will defer to advice from others that can help you. That's all I can say about that.
Well, you're right, and because the government and the establishment is going to fight back, it's going to push back, and that's why our community leaders are silent, because the establishment will push back. If you got a mortgage on your house, they'll call your mortgage in.
Advertise on WeBelieve.global, a brand new digital media platform. Share your brand with our audience on our many global live stream TV broadcasts and over the radio. For more info, visit WeBelieve.global or call 800-492-5186, option 1.